Yes, I have just fitted a lock. Twofold. One, to keep the distractions out. Two, to allow me to focus on finishing the low cost. How close is that? Yeah, this looks bad, but it isn't as bad as you might think. There is a state of disassembled disarray, but that's because I've been waiting on parts, which have now arrived. So today's episode is going to be focusing on reinstating this to being a car as much as possible. I'm going to finish the wiring, well, as much as I can, and in order to do that, we need to discuss the first thing I've bought. And continue to fail, I'm probably going to not be wearing shorts in a second. As suggested earlier, we have a hack, a life hack, I hate that expression, a solution to the wiring, which is going to make things a lot simpler. This is called the Moto Gadget. This has been designed for motorbikes, I should point out, and it's basically a one-fits-all loom control panel. Basically, it's an input-output controller, right? Designed specifically for automotive application. What does that mean? You've got a whole load of inputs and a whole load of outputs. This is a controller, a computer, a control module, basically, that will allow all of your functions to happen without having to bother with relays and fuses. Fuses, I hear you ask? Yes. You put a 40 amp fuse in before the main power for this guy, and then that obviously keeps this guy safe. But if anything pops, or should be popping a fuse on this, it's got a solid state relay that will just disable the circuit. That deals with literally all my fuses that are not related to the engine. Win. Also on the subject of relays, indicator flashers, don't worry, this deals with it. This actually has a built-in control for making indicators flash and a time delay for them to turn off, because on motorbikes, quite common that you'll leave them on because there's not a self-cancelling feature. It's built into this. So what does that mean? My indicator stock drama that I would have to think about, no longer applicable. I can just have our left and right momentary push rocker that will turn indicators on, and this will then self-cancel it. So as long as they're not a latching switch, then this will deal with it. Perfect. Also, hazards, same circuit, you just have one input, turns the hazards on, off. But wait, it's not just the lights. You've got the horn in here, great, don't need the relay. Side lights, headlights, brake lights, all controlled through this. And last of all, ignition. Ignition? But surely that's on another circuit. Well, this is Bluetooth. It's obviously one of the more spendier options you can get, but it links to your phone and another fob. And the whole thing with that is, if your phone's not near the car, it's immobilised. Remember, we got rid of the immobiliser, putting the Motorsport Electronics ECU in. So now I've got that second level of securing the vehicle. That's an IVA tick. There also appears to be a kickstand kill switch in this. Don't think we're going to need that. However, there might be a way for me to reprogram that and have something else run through there. Whether I need that or not is TBC. But now that I have this, I know exactly what switches I'll need to run into this so I can finish the dash. But before, I need to work out where this is going to live. But given the same debate has raged for months as to where the fuse box is going to live, this will simplify things a lot. Okay, the front lights in their entirety are now wired in. And by wired in, they're actually run all the way into the car. Unlike the rear, which was a bit tricky to demonstrate because it's all under the car, we're going to speed run through what I've done with this, and I'll try and give you as summarised an explanation as possible. By some absolute miracle, it appears that these headlamp bowls, which were nothing to do with the Clayton loom by the way, are actually the same wire colours. Now that's probably a standardisation on kit car stuff, but if you look here, you will observe we've got a blue-red, red and black, a blue and white and a black. Now that's 4 wires, one of which is in earth, so that gives us 3 wires. As luck would have it, the reds were the side lights, and I have standardised that to be the side lights. The blue and the red's dipped, and the blue and white's full beam. Both of those headlamps match. I also have a green and a white going to this indicator with a black to earth it, and I think a green and blue or some other colour. But basically this green setup, that's indicators for the front. Again, they've got blacks to earth them and just the single wire goes up to the back, which will show you in a wee second. So that is all of the lights for the front sorted. Also in the loom, and I thought I'd totally want to watch with this, there's fan wiring that runs all the way to the back. Well, I think it was fan. And I was like, yes, I can use that for the brake light switch because it's exactly the right length to double back and reach that little point that I put in. Except it won't, because that is also a feed wire and an earth. I need a live wire and a return. So both my feed and return needs to go back into the car. So what's probably gonna have to happen, we're gonna have to run a new wire in its entirety up from here, I don't know, there, up into the loom and into the car. And that takes me on to my next point. Our wiring has now been routed under here, through there, up the top of where the clutch pedal normally sits. And that goes through the bulkhead and basically comes out there. And then all of my lovely front of car IVA headlighty wiring, fully labelled, is sitting here. That will probably need another wee hole somewhere here. Remember, the scuttle cuts this in half, and I don't really, well, you know, in saying that, I could actually draw up that gap. As you can tell, I'm thinking about this on the fly, but that wiring needs to go to here in order for it to reach this. Ah, the next giveaway. Behold, I have already started, it's not the right height. For behold, I have already started winding up the motor gadget. That is 3 out of the possible 12 wires going to a panel of switches that's going to live in the centre of the dash. Now I have measured it and it'll sit in there lovely. And that gives me dipped beam, full beam, rear fog lights, and this. Now you go and have a double check. I think basically tail lights, side lights, and all the other lights will need to go into that. So that 4 panel will deal with all of my lights, except for the indicators. But that'll be dealt with this. A tiny little rocker switch. Yes, it is microscopic, but it will function. Now again, I want to mount all of my electrics temporarily before I put it in the dash so that I know that it's right. Now, given that this is going to sit right at the centre console and the motor gadget's going to sit shortly behind it, that's more or less where the wiring needs to be. So I'm going to go match the same for the indicators, and then we can move to a function test. This switch panel came unlabelled. Now, I have put labels on, and not just in the order you would think you would press the lights, for the sake of neatness. Side lights, dip beam, full beam, and rear fog light. Now, these are all wired to power individually. Now, what that means in the back, you've got a shared earth across all of these, and that's just to turn on the LEDs. These don't actually, strictly speaking, need that earth, unless you want the LEDs to work, which we do. But the crucial point comes in the shared lives. You'll see there's a shared live that goes to a bridge terminal on each of the switches, and then you've got an output. So when that is all live, you would need to activate the switch for this live to power out. Except I'm going to wire it slightly different, because what I don't want is for any of these to be able to work independently, because that's just not how lights work. Fundamentally, if all of the lights are off, these 3 should not be able to function until that one does. So that one will actually power up all of the rest of these. And I'm sure I can actually just rejig how this live setup works so that, yes, all of the LEDs will go on, but you will only get power to these once this is on. Similarly, once your side lights are on, you can activate the dipped beam. That will then allow these 2 to work, but only when that one is on. These 2 will need to work independently because you may need your fog light on without your front full beam, and similarly, you may need your front full beam on without your rear fog on. In summary, that powers these, that gets powered by this and powers these, and these 2 will only work when these 2 are on. That's the theory. Will this be able to make that work? We need to pin this out and work that out. By now, it should be no shock to learn I don't like electrical stuff. This is the back of my switchgear. So side lights, dipped beam, full beam, fog lights. And the power comes in from there. Now, what I think we have going on in these switches is you've got an LED that powers on just the backlight to show you a switch exists in the dark. And then when you activate the switch, there's another LED that comes on to show that this switch is active. And that switch also gives you a power output. So the way this is currently wired, all of your top ones are earths. So that makes sense. You've got to turn the LEDs on and complete a circuit. But your bottom one, that is where the trickery comes in. So you've got a power that goes in to here, and that activates your backlight, and then it bridges up to this one, and then when you activate the switch, it turns that light on, and it also allows the power to come out. The same bridge then goes across to here and starts this whole dance all the way down. So all of these can now be actuated individually because there's a power source going to all of them. All of their side lights work individually because there's power going to all of them. And when you activate each switch, the main light will come on all of them individually. We want to stop that. So what I want to do is make this one also turn on this one. This one then will be able to turn on these two. So just by logic, if not by electrical competence, I have come up with the following. I was close, but not quite right. So, putting a bridge up to here and then having this switch turn on the rest will kill all of these lights, i.e. the backlights that just show you where the switch is. So, had a little more playing about and a wee bit of sussing, and the way this needs to be wired is as follows. This guy gets powered as per before, but rather than having what we had before where it bridges up and powers this, we have a break basically. So that on switch will need to be a shared power that powers this guy up. The same goes for here. We're gonna have to bridge basically two crimps that goes to power out and powers that guy up. From here on in though, that's going to be as per the wiring because these two lights can function independently. But this way, I reckon we'll be able to keep all of our backlights on and still have functioning main lights and have functioning switches in the way I want. In theory. I've done it with one, it's probably going to fall on its arse when I try it with two, but it should work. Okay, we're getting close to the end game here, which I am absolutely delighted about because I'm sick of looking at this rat's nest. Now, I've had a wee think. My original plan here, because I had the easy earth point, was to put the Moto gadget right next to the ECU here. However, you'll see I have all of the loom that comes in from the engine, goes around to the ECU, and it's going to get quite cluttered. Now, having had a wee step back and a think about things, the Moto gadget doesn't have a cover on it, so there's a lot of wires coming out that I don't really want to get bumped. Obviously, having lives that aren't really kind of hidden too well isn't ideal. So I'm going to want to put that somewhere quite out the way, somewhere that it's not going to get bumped, somewhere that's going to be stealth. And there isn't anywhere more stealth than the back of this. This is also where the immobiliser lived. The immobiliser, remember, which now does not apply. So it's probably going to be quite beneficial, knowing that this is now completely redundant, to remove it entirely and summarise some of the loom. Also, as the fuse box is going to be no longer applicable. Summarising that's going to be quite an idea as well. So the next stage before we go terminating all of the new stuff is to get rid of the old stuff that no longer has a place. So what we have now resulted in is functioning lights to some extent. I've rigged up a test situation because we can't finalise everything until we know everything that needs to go in. That is why I have what can only be described as a rat's nest. Yeah, yeah, it's not great, but it's going to look bad before it looks better. But as you can see by the list, I have ticked off all of the things that I now have that are functional, and the M unit has been the key to this. So everything that's ticked off here more or less runs through that, with the exception of a couple of things. There are going to be some limitations for me personally with this MU unit because Moto Gadget, what is it called?
Yeah, Moto Gadget.
Am I calling it the wrong thing? I don't know. So yes, there are going to be some things that are not going to work, but that's more because of my electrical preferences and how I want the car to function than anything that's really detrimental about the little controller. And it's really my own phobias about IVA, but we'll get into that in the next episode. You'll also notice this is going to be a preview because despite the fact that the M unit does fuse more or less everything that it runs, I am going to run things that don't, but don't worry about this. That is for next week when you tune in. If you appreciate this, patreon.com/toolsandtrack, where we are going to go.
I don't.
I know you do. Everybody knows that you do. But on Patreon, we are going to run a full wire-by-wire breakdown of this when it's finished. So if anyone wants to replicate what I've done, you'll be able to find it on there. If you don't, you just enjoy watching, cool, like, bell and subscribe because it's the only way we grow. And until next weekend, guys, drive safe and
Connect wires.
Connect wires properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wires.
Lots of wires.
Many wires.
The rat's nest.